Right, good morning, folks. For those of you that haven't met me before, and I think there's a few of you, I'm Jenny Milne, so you're stuck with me for the next wee while. For those of you that are familiar with me, you'll be going, this doesn't look like a normal Jenny background or a Jenny situation. And that is very true. So please have some patience, because for the first time ever, I've had complete computer problems, and I'm now working off my father's Microsoft 2007. So please really bear with me, because this has been a challenge in all shapes and forms, okay? But I am here. In the background today, because of technical issues, we have Alex and Ali, okay? So if something goes wrong at my end, they will step in, okay? But fingers crossed, Microsoft 2007 isn't too old. For those of you that haven't met me before, whether online or in person, I founded SRITC back in 2018, and Alex and Ali and Ariana here are in the wings and helping out on a regular basis. I also do a part-time PhD, which is possibly very relevant to today's cafe, because through academia is how I met Azarel, unless he's going to correct me on that later on, which is highly possible. Anyway, welcome. It's not a traditional type of webinar type idea. It literally is chatting, cake, coffee, and learning, but the chat box is your friend. So please introduce yourself in the chat box, get to know people. We're all about positivity, and as you're about to hear, sharing lots and lots and lots of ideas. And you're going to hear some really innovative ideas from Japan, from Azarel. As usual, I have to thank our supporters for allowing SRITC to keep functioning, because money does have to make the wheels go round. So thank you very much for that. Now, without further ado, I'm just going to give you a bit of a background for those of you that haven't been to SRITC before. I founded it to bring together rural stakeholders and people interested in rural. Doesn't matter whether you're in Scotland, the UK, or overseas. And today, I think we've got several from Sweden, we've got Finland, we've got obviously Japan, we've got Switzerland, we've got Germany, and if I've missed anybody else out, I apologise, let me know in the chat. But we've got a huge selection of people, and that's the thing about rural, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you are, we all have similar challenges, and we're looking at things like ending transport poverty, about sharing knowledge, about working together with rural communities. And at the end of the day, if we all learn something new in the space of the next half hour that we can use going forward, I think that's a fantastic thing. So that's SRITC, and we run these cafes once a month. And as I said here on this slide, these are the things that we are doing now, and we've grown and grown and grown since 2018. So you all possibly get the news bulletins. As many of you know, we were meant to be running the gathering in person and hybridly last month, but obviously situations in the UK meant that we couldn't actually progress with that. But we also have a huge amount of other things that we're doing, and one of the particular is a learning knowledge centre that we're developing further and hope to be able to share with you at the new gathering date next May. So as you can tell, Alex has put up some polls, and you'll get them at the beginning and the end. Again, please just fill this in. This helps us with our funders, particularly Smarter Choices, Smarter Places, to be able to provide the evidence of what we're doing, how we're doing, and also helping us develop some key performance indicators to show that we are actually making impact. So please, I'm sorry they come up on your screen, but it is a necessity. So please do take the time to fill that in. Now, for me, today's really exciting because Azarel is literally live in Japan, and it's evening time. So I'm not going to stand between you and him, but I do want to just cover a few odds and ends. The advisory board, a few of you are on the call today, we're looking at developing and pulling together an advisory board, and some of you have come forward, which I'm really appreciative of. This is an idea whereby we're bringing together some key areas, people, dynamics, demographics, to be able to advise and provide a bit of strategy, insight to SRITC. Nothing too daunting, but something that's going to be led by those people that are on the advisory board. So if you're interested in that, drop us a message, but we're going to meet after the November Cafe. Just hold on after the November Cafe and you'll find out a bit more. You may have also seen on LinkedIn and other places that we're advertising 2 roles at the moment, both 10 hours per week. One's a virtual assistant position to help myself and Alex in particular, and the other one is a social enterprise research and impact officer. This is somebody to help out in the background with some of the projects that we've got coming forward, and to also help with SRITC growing. And before I hand over to Azarel, the last one is a question. If there's any communities out there they think they would like to get their hands on a couple of £1,000, there's an opportunity for some funding that we've found, whereby you can run events, workshops, etc., to help build a base of evidence for making a change in your area, whether it's got a health aspect, an active travel aspect, and it's not just Scotland, it's UK wide, but it has to come from communities. So if you wish to get some money, we're happy to help you. Please drop us an email or put something in the chat later on. The closing date for that is just a couple of weeks away, but we wanted to share that with you. So without further ado, and I see the chat box is going a bit nuts already, so keep that going. I'm going to hand you over to Azarel. I think, Azarel, wasn't it back in 2018, I think, that we actually met online, was it not? Through various academic sides of things. I can't see Azarel, so I'm hoping he's there. Azarel, are you there?
I am here.
Yay, you're there. Anyway, he's been stuck with me and I've been stuck with him. I think it's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? And we still haven't met in person. But you're about to learn a lot from Azarel, and I will quiz him on a few things, and then you'll get the opportunity as well to ask some Q&As. But I'll hand over to you, Azarel, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and everyone for coming in. Well, I will stick to my promise that it's evening, so I am the first one who wants to go back home and stay at the office. So I will try to make it as brief as possible. If I skip anything or, well, I just jump into something, just please do let me know in the questions. Let me just share the screen and hopefully everything will be fine. Can you all see the screen?
Yep, we sure can.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so first of all, knowing that Halloween is very close, I'm gonna do some spooky things. The first spooky thing I'm gonna do is to rebrand this cafe as tea time, because this is Japan. So welcome to our Scottish Rural Innovative Transport Community Tea Time, and from Japan. So my name is Azarel, and I am the Smart Mobility Lead here in Miraishare, which is one of the largest DRT services here in Japan. But today, although I will speak a lot about DRT services, I just want to give an overview of what kind of innovations and what kind of issues are here in Japan and how that we tackle them. Before and going to that, I want to start with this picture, because this is a picture I took last year. When summer I went to Hokkaido, which is where our company is from. It is one of the most, if not the most, rural place in Japan. It's a big area, is almost half England in a whole Arctic area. And Hokkaido is one of the examples of what is the issues going in Japan in these kind of sparsely populated areas. Railways are disappearing, transportation is getting worse and worse because, well, population is decreasing. So we need to think about how can we reverse the trend, how can we mitigate the trend. And this picture, this station actually impacted me very well, because we talked to the mayor, because this railway station is going to disappear. And this is one of the reasons, but not only, where the community starts to rebrand the station and starts to use the station as a community center, and start to develop these kind of like beautifully colorful stakes. Though it's a little bit spooky by time to time to think that this station eventually may disappear, and well, I hope it doesn't. But just to show, this is actually what the community did in the station. Like they draw this kind of map about the area. This is actually hand drawn. You could see there's a lot of activities with the community in order to revitalize the station, and they are doing the best. Yet the station is going to disappear. It has been already stated, but this is the Japan we need to find against. Now, before going to any technical or any explanation, I want to request a moment of silence from the audience. I need to explain something important. Japan, so far in these cafes, we normally talk about what's going on in Scotland or in Europe or in the West. Japan is a different country. And in order to understand what I want to explain, I think it's a good practice to keep your mind in a blank. The reason is that transportation is a very important feature in societies, but it depends on our core values, how we tackle transportation, how do we envision transportation policies or methods. So in Japan, it's completely different from the West. So I want you to not judge what is happening in Japan, and rather come with a blank mind. Now, with that said, I need to say that a key important issue in Japan is that in Japan and East Asia, China, and so on, there's this mentality that you don't get anything for free. Charity, the concept of charity, is actually a very Christian, Muslim, concept. So there's no such thing as charity. If you want something of quality, you need to pay for it. And this also includes transportation. Transportation is a market-driven sector. It's not with a huge social value, but it's not a social value per se. It's not a social industry, it's an industry. And this is important when we think about rural transportation, because as we know, one of the most difficult sides of rural transport is precisely to create some financial sustainability of the system. Japan has been able to do that and is trying to do that with innovation. And today I'm mostly going to focus about that part of the cake, the financial sustainability, how to make financially sustainable transportation solutions for rural areas. I will also talk about other things, but this will be my main focus. I think it's what we can learn the most. Now, with that said, let's go into. So first of all, what has been done so far? I mean, Japan transportation has changed in the recent years, and the government is pushing for innovation. As population decrease, so does the economy budgets for transportation policies, and so we need to come with new solutions. The government of Japan, for the last 4 years, has patronized this, what they call the Smart Mobility Challenge, which is a public kind of initiative where they provide huge amount of money, like seriously, a lot of money, for testing and expanding mobility projects. And it turns out that most of these projects, you may believe, they may happen in cities like Tokyo, Osaka, the big towns, right? Actually, no. Most of them, as you can see in this graph, they have actually happened in rural settings. And this is because transportation in big cities is mostly solved. Of course, there's a room of improvement and there's a lot of changes, but it's mostly the rural areas where Japan is focusing now. There's a good idea, I think. And the good thing is that many of these projects has actually been, they have, over the years, they have been augmented or just scrapped down if they were not very successful. And the good thing of these projects is that there are many that they fail. And this is actually good because we learn from them. All these projects, they are published on the internet with the results. So it's good to see that there's this kind of testing, and somehow this is towards, it's going through a vision of that. Now, I want to speak about 3 examples of how can we use DRT services for achieving that financial sustainability. It's not going to be only about DRT, but I'm going to talk about DRT because it's what I do. I think it's the best I can do. And I'm going to provide 3 examples, and all 3 are related to this Smart Mobility Challenge. The first one, I want to speak about our project in Kumenan. It's a project that has been there for 2.5 years. Kumenan is a very remote town in Okayama Prefecture in the south of Japan, and it has been very successful. Why? It's not just a normal DRT services. It's not just a shared taxi where you can just call and dial a ride. We merge deliveries and passengers into the same vehicles. And there are very good things of doing so. First of all, apart from obviously the revenue part is very important. When we did so, we found out that we wanted to, for the big shops, I mean, there's only like one big supermarket around. They cannot collaborate within these frameworks because they have their own logistic chains. But the small ones, those kind of like all people restaurants, all people grocery shops, it's very interesting for them because they don't have enough scale and they will never find an agreement to sell their produce to the locals. But when we did so, first of all, we need to reach out to those shops. So we need to tell them, we're going to run this service where you can actually deliver your bread with our taxis. Now, when we did that, we found that many of these old people, they didn't even know about our service. So when we explained this, they actually start to use the passenger service when they could. Also, if you think about it, it makes sense that if you're going to spend, say, for example, 100 yens to go to the shop, it makes sense that instead you may prefer to pay that or a little bit less for just having the bread delivered to you. And because this is a shared taxi, we make sure that the taxi is not going to be empty with one parcel. I mean, it may happen though, but it's not a common thing. But rather passengers and deliveries are going to share this space. Now, this is what we have done, but this is not unique in Japan. This is some examples for railway companies that we have nothing to do with. So on your right, you see this project by JREs. These are the fastest crabs on Earth. They take the crabs fresh from the harbor in North Japan. They put them in a Shinkansen, and by 320 kilometers an hour, they deliver them to Tokyo. This is very important because these crabs, these kind of local produce, if they are selling the up markets in Tokyo, the revenue is much higher. And because for the railway companies to provide this service means that the farmers or the fishermen They don't need to take their own logistics. They need to pay someone to bring their own tracks to Tokyo, bring them up and sell them. It's not the only case. On the left side, you have a different railway company who's doing the same, also in Tokyo, but in the south. And there are many, many railway companies who are using their spare seats to precisely carry these upmarket products, helping the local community. Second example, this is going to be a different case, Isashi. I love this case, once because I'm very involved in it, but once because this Isashi is a small town in the north of Japan. It's completely frozen in winter. It's terribly frozen in winter. I've been there. It's -20, -30. And we partner with a drugstore that they wanted to implement a DRT service in a town. Now, the difference is that they wanted to implement this service by using their own client cars. So they have some customer cars that you can use for paying, and they get a log of what you have bought and so on. And they're very convenient. And they want to link this with the DRT service. And the idea is that they want to provide this service for the whole town. Wherever you go is fine in the town, within the town, but they want to increase their revenue from the drug shop, because they think that maybe people will start to use this to access their shops and buy more. It turns out that this was actually true. So we run this as a pilot for 1 month, and now we have actually renewed one. We are running this for 3 more months in a larger area, and we're going to run this, if everything goes well, for much longer. So it turns out that we studied that people were spending the same amount of money in the shop, but they were visiting the shop 5 times better, 5 times more. And this is because they have either access to a transportation option they didn't have, because, for example, they were not able to take a car, or they need to ask someone to give them a lift. With this, that was no longer the case. And we increased the revenue of the shop by 4 times, including the different shops that they are not from these chains that they use this system. So this has been a very successful case for a pilot, and it opens the way about how can we link these payment systems. These are the payment cards, by the way. I need to put this because they are so cute. I mean, why would you not use this? And how we can actually link that to shops to create revenues that they can support the system. Now, one important thing is that in this project is the first one we ever run with no call center, because you may think about rural areas with all people that they have access to no internet. This is true. But in this case, we run some kind of like a chat box. I mean, better say a phone box, where they automatically receive the orders based on voice or just the app. And this is actually very interesting because we found that even old people were able to access the service. There were comments that they say they would prefer to have a human behind, but well, still the service run nicely. And this is not the only case. This is what we have done. These 2 projects I'm showing now, we have done, but this is related to tourism. So when you link transportation, on-demand transport with railways or with touristic areas, you can actually create these kind of like sources of revenues, streams of revenues from the different tourist companies. For example, the right one is about different wineries in an area where you could go with your car, or you can buy a whole packet that includes all different wine tastings and the taxi services going through all of them. This actually can support the revenue of the tourist companies, as well as removing the access from the locals that use a car, and of course easing their transportation solutions over there. So these kind of integrations, they exist, and they has been normally quite successful, case by case, but normally they has been successful to create revenue that can support the system. Now, my final example is in Odai. So this is a deep rural in the mountains of Mie, very beautiful. It's not a super touristic area, but in summer, there are some people who go there. And this one, we wanted to implement our solution, but taking advantage of a Michi no Eki. A Michi no Eki is basically a roadside station. So we decided that in this roadside station, there are already all the different mobility modes. There is EV charging, there are buses, local buses, long distance buses. And it's also a station for the Pacific Cycling Road, which is the largest cycling road in Japan. It's 1,400 kilometers. So we actually have people coming with bicycles. And it has a rest area. It has basically everything you need to create a mobility hub, a rural mobility hub. But we link it, our service, to a souvenir shop, local souvenir, local produce, that is on the right of the picture. You see this kind of like cottage house. That's actually the place. So we wanted to think about how can we promote this service for foreigners, from people who are not local, in order when they are visiting the town, and how can that link to higher revenues from the different services or multimodal station. But also we want to see how all people could use this service. So we partner with the largest printing company in Japan, a printing company, to develop this kind of like on the left side, this kind of like screen where for all people, they will be able to be there and call the taxi directly from the screen. I mean, this is a way to reach out to elderly that don't have access to phones or to internet, which happens in Japan for the elderly people. And it's also a good way to showcase, to have a physical presence of your service. So people will know now that you exist there. The service, well, about 5% of the people use this poll, which is not really successful in this case, but well, the experiment was done and we learned from that. We actually will renew the contract and we will try in the future different solutions about how can we improve this service. Now, this is not the only way we have to join different transportation service in rural settings with cost optimization. This is a picture from JR East. So in rural Japan, JR, for example, is partnering with different companies or with the post office to remove the people from, so basically have unmanned stations on these chains of the post office or a bar taking over the ticket selling information counter. This it reduces the cost of the railway company, therefore they can continue operating the railway. And it's a good way to save costs. In Europe, I was recently traveling through Europe, and I saw in some stations that, for example, there is a bar that manages the ticket selling. These kind of solutions are actually coming to Japan. So just finally, there's of course much more solutions that are happening in Japan. I'm not going to go deep into them. Of course, if someone has a question, I'm happy to. Like autonomous vehicles, green slow mobility, drones, or even how to use cute things like Hello Kitty to promote transportation and tourism in rural areas. This is happening, and we're still in an early phase. All of this we expect to contribute to the revitalization of the transportation in rural areas. But again, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to go through, but maybe we can make a different cafe on that topic. So thank you very much. That was basically my whole presentation about the whole thing we have done, and I welcome your questions, and I hope I was